So I've just read an article which I think really summarizes the lunacy of political correctness. And I'll read the first few paragraphs out. It's not very long, so please bear with me. This is from the London Evening Standard. Okay, I'll just zoom up. I have to take a picture on the camera in order to get the report because when I have just a quick explanation about that. When I have the camera open, I cannot have two screens with the way my computer is designed. Anyway, this is how the report goes. Young children at schools up and down the country are to be told to stop pushing the terms boys and girls. Guidance being sent out for use by teachers, parents, and pupils as young as 7 advises against the language because of fears it discriminates against transgender people, the Mail on Sunday reported. The book instead encourages the use of terms such as cisgender for children who identify with the gender in which they were born, i.e., 99.9% of the population. But yeah, it also uses the term genderqueer and panromantic, meaning someone who is attracted to people of all gender identities. It is entitled Can I Tell You About Gender Diversity? And features a fictional story about a 12-year-old boy transitioning from female to male. Its publishers describe it as the first book to explain medical transitioning for children aged 7 and above. And there's a bit more to the report, but I think that lays out the gist. Now, firstly, there is usually the left wing reaction when reports come from right wing publications like the Mail on Sunday. I think there's no smoke without fire, and I'm not a big fan of the Mail. And I would agree that sometimes the Mail can exaggerate certain reports. But I have also seen the behaviour and the attitudes of the loony left in recent years, and um, there's no smoke without fire. This is precisely the sort of nonsense that they come out with. So let's just analyse this a little bit. Um, this is trying to indoctrinate children that using the terms boy or girl is something to be ashamed of, and it's doing it under the context of tolerance. But the fact of the matter is, less than 1% of the population is transgender. Now, does that mean that their rights shouldn't be respected? Of course not. Does it mean that because they're a minority, they should be ignored? Of course not. But does that mean that they should get special privilege and society should change its entire lexicons to suit sensibilities? I think not. Um, I mean, this is nuts. Uh, Firstly, I'm 100% against transitioning of children. I think that is reckless. From what I understand, the hormone transition process can be quite exhausting. It can be exhausting in terms of the energy it takes out of the person, and that's from adults. I think transitioning children is downright immoral. I think children are too young to determine such a profound thing as sex. Okay, and left, the particular branch of the left that I'm talking about, love to say, oh, sex and gender aren't the same thing. But when we're talking about transition and we are talking about biology, because that is the process, that's what you want to do. It doesn't mean that scientifically it's a fact. If you're born with a penis, you are biologically male. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. And no amount of political correctness changes that. In terms of gender identity, sure, you can identify as male or female. But what I'm arguing is that biology is biology is biology, and frankly, amputating your penis doesn't change that. And I just think it's dead wrong for children. If I had a son or a daughter and they really went down this line, I would say, look, I love you, I want you to be happy, but this is something you have to wait until you're 18. I'm sorry, but when you're under 18, in my mind, you're still a child, you're a teenager. It's just too young to make that sort of decision. At 18, personally, I would hope they didn't make the decision because I think it comes with serious health consequences. but as an adult, I wouldn't stand in the way, and I would still love them regardless. But this is just the sort of crap that the deaf come out with. The loony left, I should say. I shouldn't I shouldn't sort of generalize everyone in the left, but it's nonsense. It's just utter nonsense. That 99% should change for 1%, and that is just a perception anyway, because children aren't going to be transgender. As far as I know, um, the law at the moment is that you have to be an adult to go through the process in this country. I'm not 100% sure about that. I hope that is the case. But it's just cultural Marxist bullshit. And there, I said it. I know the left don't like that term because they associate it with being used by extremists like Anders Breivik, which it was. But the point is, there is a real issue going on here, and that is that political correctness is shackling, it's nonsense, and far from promoting tolerance, all it does is create awkwardness, creates confusion, and it's got nothing to do with politeness. It's got everything to do with thought control. And it is bullshit. I honestly believe if these people have their way, in 10 years from now, male, female, boy, girl is going to be completely outlawed, and we're all going to be walking organisms, gender neutral walking organisms, because that would be the neutral term. But then, of course, that might be supremacist to certain other types of organisms. So we will be gender neutral, non speciesist walking organisms. Um, this might sound like I'm taking the piss, but if you look at the sort of thought process that goes into what these people are proposing, it actually isn't exaggeration. They get so hung up on sensitivities that they fail to realize all it is doing is creating awkwardness. I mean, are we really going to be in a situation where we're shaming children for using the term boys and girls? What the fuck? I'm sorry, but that it's just nonsense. And the loony left don't get why this pisses people off. It pisses people off not because they're bigots, not because they want to bully people or anything like that. It pisses people off because it is thought control. That's what it is. And it's going to, they say it's about tolerance, but who is really being tolerant here? It's a very small minority trying to promote their terminology on the rest of society. It's bullshit. And just a quick summary about how I feel about political correctness in general. I think sometimes those who argue that, well, they wouldn't use the term political correctness, but those who say, oh, it's just some big right wing conspiracy. Firstly, I'm a centrist. I'm not right wing. There's many issues I would consider myself centre left on. I'm going to make a video later today on workplace exploitation. Now, that's hardly the domain of a right winger. Um, the point I'm making is that is usually the refute. Oh, it's a big right wing conspiracy in order to justify discrimination and so on. Wherever I see injustice or discrimination or bullying, I will condemn it. And it is true that there are some people who are just basically assholes who will use political correctness as a cover for being assholes. So my response to that is quite simple. If someone is being a dick, if someone is being unpleasant, if they're being nasty, call them out for it. But don't try to change society by changing the entire terminology of everything. I mean, I honestly think these people sit up on their computer late at night trying to find new words to just bring into their vocabulary. I mean, what is it now? 35 different gender pronouns? It's getting absurd. It really is getting absurd. Um, and I appreciate the fact that, it isn't quite as simple as male and female. I do appreciate that there is that third area that is grey. But the thing is, they're not happy with just being in third area. They will keep going up and up and up till there's so many terms. It's just going to be complete. it's going to be a complete maze. Um, I mean, this is seen in LGBTQ plus, and that's now going to turn into LGBTQQ plus question mark plus another question mark. And I'm not exaggerating. That is the way this sort of thought process of the loony left is going. What happened to just live and let live? If people are being bullies, if a transgender person is getting a hard time, yes, they should be protected by law. No one should have to go through that. But it shouldn't be at the price of becoming a super sensitive society where every single goddamn syllable is potentially going to trigger someone. This isn't about being more thoughtful, it's about being more controlling. And it's just utter nonsense. And I do mention the loony left. I'm not talking about the left in general. I believe there's many centre left people who agree this is nonsense. And they probably feel it damages their respective movements. I don't believe it does anything for transgender rights, actually. Hell, I'm sure there's transgender people out there who would agree with me that this has the potential to just go too far to the point of being ridiculous. I am a heterosexual white man, right? I'm not a cisgender, um, whatever you want to label it. Yeah, so to me, that report really summarizes just how insane political correctness is. Um, where people are being assholes, where they're being unpleasant, where they're being bullies, fine, call them out, criticize them. But this structuring of language to the point where everything is kind of molded so that it doesn't offend people, it's nonsense. I'm not saying that people should not care about how others feel. I'm not saying that people should just be crude and, not give consideration to how others feel. But I do feel that political correctness has far, far, far more to do with control than any notion of etiquette. That's an excuse that its proponents use. So let me know your thoughts. I think this is complete horseshit. And to be honest, I am pleased that there are newspapers calling this out. I may not like them in other areas, but I have to admit, if it wasn't for the Mail calling these things out, I don't think other papers would. So I'll give them credit for that.